So people say maybe it's time for a change. They take a look at our economy, and they say, now how is it that record profits, stock market all-time high, productivity skyrocketing, and yet average wages and salaries are flatlined? And people suspect, globalization may be here to stay. We can't draw a moat around America. We understand we've got to compete, and no workers work harder on earth than American workers. But we want to make sure that we've got fair trade and that our treaties are enforced. And we also understand that we're going to have to make sure that every child is able to compete by having the kind of math instruction and science instruction, and most of all, access to higher education. And so when they see Congress raising interest rates on student loans precisely at the time that young people need access to college, and we've got 200,000 young people around the country who aren't going to college because they can't afford it, they say that doesn't make sense, it's time for a change. Then they look at energy policy. Here's some good news. Even though gas prices have gone down, folks are still asking about an energy policy, probably because they know that, gas prices may be going down now, but what happens after the election, they might go right back up. But it's not just a pocketbook issue. People also understand, why would we send $800 million a day to some of the most hostile nations on earth? So we end up funding both sides of the war on terrorism. It's not good for our national security. It's not good for our environment. So they say, why wouldn't we try to produce alternative fuels and flexible fuel vehicles and all the strategies that can produce jobs and be good for the environment and be good for our children? Why wouldn't we do something like that? And then they look at Iraq and they say, our young men and women have gone above and beyond the call of duty. They have given their full measure of devotion. Anybody who visits Walter Reed Hospital and sees 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds, their bodies shattered, lost limbs, lost eyesight, trying to piece their lives back together again. They understand, this is a country of patriots. There's nobody here in this field that if we could prevent 9/11 from happening again, we wouldn't pick up arms ourselves to defend this country that we love. But they also know that the might of our military should be matched by the strength of our diplomacy and the power of our alliances. That we shouldn't be going someplace without having an idea how we're going to get out. And we're tired of spending $500 billion in Iraq that could be spent right here in Arkansas. And so people say it's time for a change. So that's the good news. People are paying attention right now. And when Americans pay attention, when folks in Arkansas pay attention, good things happen because at their core, the American people are a decent people. They get confused sometimes. They're not paying attention. They're too busy. They're too tired. They're looking after their kids. They're working the job. They don't have time to be reading position papers on North Korea or the budget deficit. They got other stuff to do. But every once in a while, when things go off track, they suddenly look up and they start paying attention. They take notice. That's what's happening in this election, which presents us an enormous opportunity for change. And it's precisely at those times that good people step up. And so when we have the opportunity to elect a governor in Arkansas who has shown throughout his life that he understands what it's like to go through hard times, that he appreciates the role that government can play in giving somebody a hand up, not a handout, somebody who recognizes that government's job is to work for the people, not for special interests, not for the politicians themselves. Somebody who's been able to work through the process of state government, and then join constitutional office, and in each and every job that he has, perform in an exemplary fashion and with integrity, then we know that that's somebody who's right for the times. We know that's somebody who can make things happen. And so I'm going to bring him up in a second, but before I do, I just want to remind people that the most important office, though in a democracy, is the office of citizen. And what happens over the next 10 days is going to depend on you. I appreciate everybody coming out for us today, but it's easy standing in a rally. If you want to really express hope, that ingredient that closes the gap between the world as it is and the world as it might be, then we got to put some sweat into it. We got to put some hard work into it. You know, I remember one of my favorite sayings of Dr. King's, a saying that the Little Rock Nine would have understood. He said this about 2 weeks after the march on the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma had been turned back. You'll recall the horses were there and the billy clubs and the tear gas was there to meet the marchers who were simply marching for their freedom. And people were discouraged then. They thought, well, maybe we just can't make anything happen here. Maybe it's too hard to try to desegregate Alabama and make sure that people have the right to vote. And Dr. King gathered them up in a church. And he said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. It bends towards justice. We can't see sometimes God's purpose. We can't see it bend in the direction of justice, but it's bend in that way. Here's the thing, though, it doesn't bend on its own. It bends because we put our hands, each and every one of us, put our hands on that arc and we bend it in the direction of justice. And so in the next 10 days, I need everybody here to commit to putting their hand on that arc and bending it in the direction of justice. I need y'all to knock on some doors, and I need you to make some phone calls. I need you to gather up your cousins and your uncles and everybody who you know. And I want y'all to tell them that, listen, if we all do the work that we have to do in the next 10 days, then not only are we going to have a Democratic House, not only are we going to have a Democratic Senate, but we're going to elect the next Democratic governor of the great state of Arkansas. Give it up for Mike Beebe.
Senator Obama, ladies and gentlemen. Wow. Wow.